Lucky you, you've got $10,000. Maybe you had a nice tax refund, maybe you got a really good bonus at work, or maybe you had a long lost great uncle who you've never met that left you a great inheritance. Whatever the reason, the next steps that you should follow are pretty much the same for everybody. In this video, we'll talk about what to do with your unexpected cash to better set up your financial future. Before we get started, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those bell notifications so that you stay up to date on all of the latest money and personal finance videos. So you've got some extra cash, enough to maybe buy a jet ski, take a nice trip to Europe, or even a nice down payment on a luxury car. But you're not going to do that. Instead, you're going to put that money to good use so that your future self will thank you. So the first thing you're going to want to do is set up a 1-month emergency fund. And what this means is that you have enough cash on hand to cover 1 month of expenses. I would recommend keeping this short-term emergency fund in your checking account, or at least a chunk of it. The interest that you lose by not having it in a high-yield savings account is minimal compared to the extra padding that it gives you in your checking account. This saves you from overdraft fees and gives you a little bit of peace of mind. A good mental trick that I started doing to keep my checking account padded was to set a floor. So I keep $1,000 in my checking account at all times. But mentally, I read that $1,000 as zero. So if I have $1,200 in my checking account, in my mind, I interpret that as I only have $200. If I ever dip below $1,000, I immediately work to bring that back up again. Next, you're going to want to tackle any high interest debt. Now personally, I consider high interest debt as anything around 10% or higher. For most people, this means credit card debt. Sometimes people are tempted to invest any extra cash and continue making minimum payments to their credit cards, but this is almost always a bad idea, and here's why. For example, let's say that you have $10,000 in cash. You also have $10,000 in credit card debt at a 15% interest rate, which is on the low end of the national average. You can invest that cash in an index fund, and let's say that the stock market is having a good year, so your return rate is 12%, which is on the high end of average. Or you could pay off your credit card debt investing nothing in the stock market. If you were to choose the first option and invest all of your extra cash in the stock market, at the end of the year, you would have $11,200. But that $10,000 in credit card debt that you ignored grew to $11,500, so you're down $300. And this is being really optimistic with our assumptions. The stock market could have a bad year, and that $10,000 investment could shrink in half in just the span of 1 year. But the interest on credit card debt is guaranteed, so the return on your investment is much more predictable because you know exactly how much money you'll be able to save by paying off that credit card early. After you've tackled your high interest debt, the next step is to build a 3 to 6 month emergency fund. It's important to have enough cash on hand so that you're not forced to take out more credit card debt or personal loans in the event that you lose your job or have an unexpected expensive repair. Now, the size of this emergency fund will depend on a few factors, including your job security, whether you have a working spouse, whether you have children or other dependents, and your own personal risk tolerance. Remember how I said to keep your 1 month emergency fund in your checking account? Well, for your longer term emergency fund, you'll want to keep that in a high yield savings account. Most of you probably bank at Chase or Wells Fargo or some other big traditional bank. Most of the time, these traditional banks offer terrible savings accounts. I mean, just truly, truly terrible. They offer something like 0.01% interest on your money in savings accounts, which is just awful. That's not even remotely keeping up with inflation, which means that your cash effectively loses value every year that it's sitting in that account. Honestly, I'd be less offended if they just didn't give you any interest in your savings account. Luckily, there are some other options on the market. Online banks like Ally Bank, Marcus by Goldman Sachs, and Capital One Bank offer savings accounts with interest rates above 1%. Most of the high-yield savings accounts out there, at least the good ones, have no minimum deposit and charge no fees, so it's a really great place to park your money. I also think it's psychologically advantageous to put your money in a bank that's not your primary bank, because you're less likely to spend that money if you can't immediately access it. Most of the time you have to transfer, and that takes 1 to 2 business days. Okay, so you've got your emergency fund set, you've paid off any high interest debt. What next? Well, if your employer offers a 401k match, you'll want to take advantage of that. So for example, let's say that somebody makes $50,000 a year. Their employer offers a match of 5% of their salary into their 401k. This means that if you contribute $2,500, your employer also puts in $2,500. That's an immediate 100% return on your investment, and that just can't be beat by pretty much anything else out there. Unless you get really lucky investing in cryptocurrency or gambling at the casinos, there's really no other way that you can beat that return. Even if your employer offers just 50 cents on the dollar, that's still a 50% return on investment. Now, most employers offer traditional 401ks, so that's probably what you would be contributing to. Traditional 401ks mean that you're putting in your money pre-tax. For a single person in 2020 earning $50,000, their marginal tax rate is 22%. 22% of $2,500 is $550. Now, normally all of that money would go to federal income tax, but because you're investing in your traditional 401k, you get to keep all of that money. So you can see why contributing to your 401k up into the employer match is such a great use of your extra cash. You could even make a case for prioritizing this above paying off high interest debt like credit cards, because it's just such a great return on investment. But honestly, that really comes down to personal preference, because credit card debt accumulates over time, so it can be really debilitating both financially and psychologically if you don't get that paid off very quickly. If you guys have a different opinion, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to open a discussion about it. If you have access to an HSA, you should max that out after meeting your 401k match. HSA stands for Health Savings Account, and you're only eligible to contribute to one if you have a high deductible health plan. Because these health plans tend to have lower premiums in favor of higher deductibles, HSAs were created to incentivize people to save for their out-of-pocket health expenses. Currently, the 2020 contribution limit for a single person is $3,550. HSAs are triple tax advantaged, meaning that you're not taxed when the money goes in, you put in pre-tax income, you're not taxed on the investment growth that happens in that account, and you're not taxed when you take that money out. On retirement accounts, you're either taxed when the money goes in or when the money goes out. So HSAs are great because you're not taxed on either entry or exit, meaning that you should prioritize them ahead of maxing out the rest of your retirement. Now, you are a little bit limited on what you can use that money for in an HSA because they are meant to be used for medical expenses. However, when you turn 65, you can take out that money for whatever reason, meaning that it essentially functions as a retirement account. And because it's triple tax advantaged, it's a great account to park your money in if you have access to it. So after funding your 401k up to the employer match and maxing your HSA if you have access to one, you'll want to max your Roth IRA. IRA stands for Individual Retirement Account, and they function very similarly to 401ks, except they're not sponsored by employers, so anybody can invest in them as long as they have earned income. There are two types of IRAs, Roth and traditional. In Roth, you put in money post-tax, meaning that you don't get any tax benefits in the years that you contribute, but that money grows tax-free, meaning that when it's time to take that money out, you get to take it out completely tax-free. In traditional IRAs, it works the opposite. So you put in pre-tax contributions, meaning that you lower your tax burden in the years that you contribute. However, that money does grow, and when it comes time to invest it, you do have to pay taxes on the money that you withdraw. Now, the max that you can contribute to an IRA in 2020 is $6,000, whether that's a Roth or a traditional. If you want to work this into your long-term budget, that's $500 a month. Now, at this point, you might be asking, Alex, if IRAs are so similar to 401ks, why not just max out your 401k completely and then worry about an IRA? Well, here's why. First, as we just discussed, Roth accounts are a great way to let your money grow tax-free. Now, your employer might offer a Roth 401k, but this is pretty rare, and chances are they probably only offer traditional 401ks. So that means your only option to contribute post-tax dollars is by using a Roth IRA. Second, 401ks tend to have slightly higher expense ratios and less flexibility when it comes to choosing the individual funds or stocks that you invest in. With IRAs, you have the flexibility to choose both your brokerage as well as the funds that you purchase. You could YOLO your entire Roth IRA portfolio on Tesla stock if you really wanted to, which is something that your 401k plan probably doesn't offer. Just in case it wasn't clear, I don't recommend doing that. So at this point, you've got your emergency funds, you've paid off any high interest debt, you've contributed to your 401k enough to reach the employer match, you've maxed out your HSA if you have one, you've maxed out your Roth IRA. Now what? Now you're going to want to address the rest of your debt, if you have any, not including your mortgage. So for most people, this means student loans, car loans, and maybe other personal loans. On average, these loans tend to be around 5 to 6%. Now, the reason that I put this step after maxing your IRA is because a Roth IRA offers really important tax advantage space. The max you can contribute to your Roth IRA is $6,000 per year, and you only have until April of the following year to contribute to that space. If you forego contributing to your Roth IRA 1 year, you lose that space forever. So for me, the long-term tax benefits that I get by investing in my Roth IRA year over year outweigh the interest that I'm paying on these types of loans. So I always prioritize my Roth IRA first. If you have a lower risk tolerance or your loans are closer to 8 or 9%, you might want to consider paying them off before maxing your Roth IRA. Now, at this point, you can go back to your 401k and max that out. The 2020 limits for 401k contributions are $19,500, and this does not include the employer match. And if you're adding all of this up now and thinking in your head, Alex, this is a lot more than $10,000, you're right. I'm including this for the sake of completion. Deal with it. So if you've made it this far, that means that you've contributed $19,500 to your 401k and $6,000 to your Roth IRA, meaning that you have saved $25,500 for your retirement. And that does not include the employer match or your HSA contributions, if applicable. And if you still have money left over after doing all of these things, you have a few options to consider. First of all, treat yourself. I mean, seriously, congratulations. You're in such a great financial position that few people will ever achieve. So celebrate. Buy that jet ski. But don't go too crazy. Maybe just rent one instead. I mean, you'll get the same enjoyment, honestly. You could also pay off your mortgage. Now, with interest rates so low right now, especially for mortgage loans, financially, the best decision is probably to use your money and invest it elsewhere. You'll get a better return somewhere else. But there's definitely a psychological and emotional benefit to owning your home free and clear that cannot be understated. So this is definitely a personal choice, but now you have the freedom to make that choice. You could also open a taxable investment account. Now, you won't get the same tax benefits as your 401ks, your IRAs, your HSAs, but if you've maxed all of those out, this is really your only other option for investment. This is probably the easiest option if you still want to make some return on your money, but don't want to do a whole lot of work for it. Finally, you could consider getting into real estate investing. This is something that a lot of people do to make their extra cash work for them. You buy an undervalued house, you renovate it a bit, you rent it out at a high enough rate that covers the mortgage, the expenses, and nets you a nice little profit after everything's said and done, and you just rinse and repeat. Now, this is something that you want to do a lot of research on before you get into it, but I just wanted to include it in this list as something for you to consider. I do want to add that a lot of these steps can be reordered and reprioritized based off of your personal preference and your risk tolerance, but the core really should remain the same. Build your emergency fund, pay off your loans, prioritizing those with highest interest rate first, and contribute to tax advantage retirement accounts. There are also some other things that I didn't mention in this video in order to keep it a little bit more general. If you know you've got some big expenses coming up, like buying a car or putting a down payment on a house, you'll probably want to save up for those as well. Some employers also offer employer stock option plans, which can sometimes be a great thing to take advantage of if you have access to it. And if you have children, you might consider opening a 529 for them to pay for future college expenses. I'll get into some of those nuances and more in my future videos, so make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so that you stay up to date whenever I release new videos. If you found this video helpful, be sure to hit that like button so that YouTube knows to share it with more people. I hope this guide helped you figure out what to do with your extra cash. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.